part of my life since I went over to Kipta Peak State Park. Well, it wasn't a state park then, actually. It hadn't been created as a state park. It was still privately owned in 1974, but they had been, a group of ornithologists had been trapping hawks and other little JBD, little brown jobbers. And they got me so interested that 50 years later I'm still doing it. So the main thing that changed from 1974 was whenever they would catch in their nets a sharp-shinned hawk or American kestrel or a merlin, where's Reese? He doesn't mind getting his hands chewed on. So I've got little nicks and so forth here and there. But it became, as my wife said, an incurable disease. And I've been doing it ever since. So part of my activities has included participation in the Peregrine Reintroduction Program, which took place starting about 1975. What had happened, one of the victims of our use of persistent pesticides like DDT, it got into our water systems, and as a result of that, species like bald eagles and osprey, peregrine falcon, even birds like great blue herons and so forth, suffered significantly. Worldwide, there are 19 different subspecies of peregrine in the world. So the peregrine that's in the deserts of Africa are not the same peregrine that are here. It's a different subspecies in Australia. New Zealand doesn't have any, even though they're not really so close. Everybody been to Australia and New Zealand, you find out they're not close neighbors. They're actually like 800 miles or so apart. It takes a few hours to fly from one to the other, and a few weeks by canoe. So, ever tried a canoe? I have. The southern oceans are no place to be in a canoe. So, the East Coast population, which was known as an atom, was completely eliminated. We had none. And the ornithologists that had been following peregrine for years, which became the World Bird Center, which is in Boise, Idaho, they took on the project of trying to recreate a subspecies of peregrine on the East Coast. I participated in that starting about 1978. They were raising artificially birds at the World Birds of Prey Center in Boise, Idaho, and bringing them out here, some to Back Bay National Wildlife Refuge, some to Hack Towers, out on the Outer Banks of Virginia. Actually, there was a group out yesterday, one of the towers that's still up, and gotten blown over in one of the storms here about a month ago, and they're out there trying to get it raised back up, because this is a period of time that peregrine are laying their eggs. So my involvement started back in 1978, trapping the birds that were reintroduced to the East Coast and trying to monitor their activities, because generally speaking, particularly young birds migrate along the coastline. Adults, we don't know why, but adults frequently migrate down the mountain ridges. My activity, I've trapped about 12,000 raptors, and about 400 of those are peregrine. And of those, 90% were juveniles that I trapped. So The continuation of that project, today, there are 29 breeding pair of peregrine. Well, I shouldn't say today because we don't know today yet. Last season, we had 29 pair in Virginia. One of the unique things about peregrine is most birds build a stick nest. Unless maybe you're a little hummingbird, you might use moss and that type of fine materials. But peregrine falcons are native to cliffs, so they don't know anything about building stick nest. They generally find a cliff edge and scrape, and we call it a scrape, a few eggs and a few rocks and a little circle, lay their eggs in the middle of it so they don't roll off the cliff. So what looks like a cliff around here?
Town center.
Bridges.
Armada Hofler and
Yeah.
Pembroke, the Weston and Pembroke. Richmond has a couple tall buildings. Ruston, of the 29, 3 are on buildings. And one of those is here in Virginia Beach, the Armada Hofler building initially, except for last year, and we have no clue. As long as I've been doing this, I still don't know how to speak peregrine, but they don't talk to them anyway, they probably lie, because they don't want you to know their secrets. So anyway, for whatever reason, last year they moved from the Armada Hoffer, where we put a nice little nest box with some pebble rocks in it for them. They've been using it since 2016, but for some unknown reason, they just didn't explain it to us. They moved to the 33rd floor balcony of the Weston. So I've got some pictures over here on the table that will show you the most unusual nest that I've dealt with, and it was a vegetable planter that was about 2 feet by 4 feet long, and they laid 4 eggs in the vegetable planter. On the 33rd floor of the Weston, for my benefit, I know they did this intentionally, the balcony was right outside the bedroom of the owners of that condo, and they gave me exclusive permission. Anytime I wanted, they didn't have to be home. I could, which was probably a benefit actually, because I wouldn't have to catch anybody taking an afternoon nap or anything like that. And I had exclusive access to their bedroom to look out the window and be this close away from the peregrines, because the planter was right up next to the window. It was nice and clean, but later in the season, there's no bathroom behavior ethics in the peregrine. And they would point and drip down the window, and after a while I could barely see out that window anymore. But I may have a picture or two over there of that. Maybe I didn't put that in there. But anyway, let's talk about the peregrine world here in Tidewater. Let's see, wait a minute. There we go. So, we work cooperatively. We begin the Center for Conservation Biology at the College of William and Mary. I've been involved with them the entire time, so almost 50 years. This is actually the beginning of the 50th year. So I'm a research associate for them, a volunteer, and been doing this now almost 50 years. So this is what a peregrine looks like. A peregrine flaps really fast, and the reason it flaps really fast is those long pointy wings like that are not like a red-tailed hawk or a bald eagle. They can soar, but a peregrine tries to do that and it falls out of the sky because it just doesn't have what's called wing load. Therefore, those long pointy wings are great for speed. The peregrine can exceed 200 miles an hour and what's called a stoop or a dive. They're a typical way of catching prey, and they want it in the air, they don't want it sitting on the ground. So if it's sitting on the ground, they'll dive at it and make it get up. Because for them, it's just more accommodating for them to be in the air when they catch their prey. So 200 miles an hour, I've had them do that. One time I had a peregrine I trapped over at what's called Wise Point on the eastern shore of Virginia. When you cross the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel, you get to Fisherman's Island and then another bridge and you're at Wise Point. And for over 20 years I trapped raptors at that location, over 10,000 at that point. Well, actually part of those were on Fisherman's Island. But anyway, I had a peregrine that was ignoring me, which is I didn't like that at all. I mean, that was just an insult to have the bird completely bypass me, not paying attention to me. So I yelled at it. And it turned around and looked. The next thing I knew, that thing was flying 200 miles an hour, went right through 3 of my nets. So I didn't catch that one. I tried. It's the best I could do. Okay. So, where are they located in Virginia? Most of them on the eastern shore of Virginia. Then we've got the one, this is the one down here in Virginia Beach. This past year, 29 of we had 29 pair that were actively breeding, and of those, they produced 62 chicks. Each year, I didn't put it down, I don't think. Each year we produce a report. We haven't done 22 yet. So we produce, we being the Center for Conservation Biology, we produce an annual report that gives the detailed information about the activities. To the extent we can, we are abandoning every chick that we can get to. Every once in a while, they'll put a nest someplace that just makes it impossible. Some of them are on like the James River Bridge and several other bridges in Virginia, and sometimes they just are not very accommodating, and they put their nest where we can't get to it. So those chicks don't get banded, but for the most part, we have banded everyone we can. So they're unique bands. USGS band is typically silver, but we use green bands, and on one leg, and on the right leg usually. On the left leg, we use a color band, and in Virginia, it's black and green. That's unique to us. So anytime we see a bird, or we just had one, for example, that was identified in New York. The one at Pembroke for the last 2 years, I'll explain about this year. Last 2 years, 21 and 22, had a black band. She came from New Jersey, and she laid 1 egg the first year. In 21, she laid 4 eggs last year. So they do migrate. Some peregrines make it all the way to Brazil. We've had reports from Tierra del Fuego, which is a very southern part, Patagonia region of South America. So they can be long distance migrators, usually not all the way to Tierra del Fuego, but sometimes 400 or 500 miles of migration. Okay, better move on. Pardon?
Can you go back to that last slide, excuse me? I was just wondering why, is this only identified areas? Why is there a difference, but why is there only 2 ducks on the other side of the state?
Well,
and why are they on the state?
yeah. I'll explain how they get out there. They do it by themselves. We don't usher them out there. We do take them to Shenandoah National Park, and most of the time we don't know if they're successful. We've actually had a couple return all the way to the East Coast, even though we've taken to the Shenandoah National Park. We had one, for example, on the Berkeley Bridge. It's been there for 8 years, and this past year it flew into a building and broke its wing and had to be put to sleep. But that was a bird that had been all the way out there, but came all the way back to the East Coast. And we've had that happen before. Kevin?
Reese, did you say, are they on the endangered species list?
They were on the endangered species list. They are no longer, they're taken off the endangered species list in 2007 because the population has recovered somewhat. The current population, the ornithologists require 75 years before they officially recognize a new species. We're 50 years, 53 years, something like that, into that process. Eventually, I think this population that's being created right now was actually made up of 8 different subspecies, the sperm and eggs from 8 different species. So it's a unique bird that we have flying on the East Coast today. It will eventually become known as the Eastern Peregrine, but we still have 20 years or so before that's formally recognized. So, continue on.
Will it be Lukei?
I hope not. I'm just a minuscule part of what's going on these days. So you can see the growth from 1980. We only had 3, and we made it up to 29, 30 pair by 2018. That's 16, excuse me.
That's
That's just in Virginia. That's correct. Some of the other states have not put the same effort into this reintroduction program. In Virginia, it was led primarily by Dr. Mitchell Byrd from William and Mary. We just 2 weeks ago had a reception for him. He's 94 years old. And in one room, he had more avian experience than you'll find any place because of the people that he's mentored, including me, over the years. So you can see the steady growth. It's somewhat leveled out over the last 4 or 5 years.
What's the survival rate of the chicks?
Yeah, that's still data we're collecting. I know of some of the chicks, for example, the one that was on the Berkeley Bridge that died last year is one that we banded. So that's an example of what can happen where their normal lifespan, which might be 20 years, in his case was only 8 years, but it was cut short because he broke his wing and had to be euthanized. So we're still gathering that data. It's still a very young subspecies of peregrine. So this is how we know that some of them have migrated, and you can see the distances some go, some end up in Florida and Texas. So that's information that we have collected over a number of years. This is Dr. Mitchell Byrd with a bird that I trapped, and it's a juvenile, a first-year bird making its first journey to wherever it's heading. This is one of the hack towers. We put one up at Back Bay, one at Mackey Island, and there's like 5 or 6 on the eastern shore of Virginia. 3 of those are still active. A hack tower is a facility that it's a pretty low cliff. We have found that peregrine will adapt to them. Plus, sometimes we have moved birds out there to have them hacked. The facility at Shenandoah National Park is not actually a hack tower. It's out on the edge of a cliff in a box sitting out there. And I may have a picture of that over there.
And that is just for one couple, that isn't for several.
Yes. Oh no, they are a very aggressive species. You would never, ever find 2 peregrines that were close neighbors. They're just too private. The birds in their zone are their birds, and they don't belong to anybody else. What I found out in some of my activity at Pembroke following that pair is one of their favorite prey, in addition to the pigeons, including carrier pigeons that people are flying back and forth. We found a number of leg bands that we know came off of pigeons. Their prey, they fly by, they at their own risk. But I found the yellow-billed cuckoo to be one of their most often prey at Pembroke. So you wonder, where a yellow-billed cuckoo? Well, if you look behind the Armada Hoffler and at the end of the west end, you'll find there's a big pond, area back there that has a lot of ducks and a lot of other species that call that home.
I have a question. I feed birds in my backyard. I have several bird feeders there. In the last 2 days, when I walked out there to pick up the dog ball or something like that, there have been pigeon feathers, because I get pigeons in the house in the morning outside the house. And up on my patio, there was another smaller bird's feather. Would there be one that knows that's where they gather
Probably
now?
not Peregrine.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
but you
There are feathers
likely
there that I
have
haven't
red-billed
seen
hawk
before.
and Cooper's hawks
okay,
in
thank
your
you.
neighborhood.
Uh-huh.
That's what's most likely doing that. So this is the James River Bridge, and the Peregrine box is actually right up here, and they've been using that. We had a camera on that for a number of years, but we've not activated it this year. The first pair back in our region, this part of Virginia, was actually sitting up here. Oh, you know, it's supposed to have a light. Does that work?
Oh, there it is.
Do you see it?
Yeah.
Where
Oh,
is
it's a
it?
little tiny, yeah.
Okay, all right, sitting up here. I may have another picture closer. That's the Bank of America today.
At
Yeah,
Bank
there
of
we go.
America, what?
This was
what city?
1982,
Bank
so-
of America where? In
downtown
Virginia Beach?
Norfolk,
Oh, in Norfolk.
downtown Norfolk. And you can see,
Yeah,
very accommodating, that's as close to a cliff as we can get around here. So that was 41 years ago. So this is what a hatch-year bird looks like. So I figure out how that thing, y'all can see that? I must be blind, I don't see it.
doesn't work very well on the TV.
Yeah, okay. So this is a juvenile, first year, we would call it hatch year. And you can see this is one of the artificial species that we have created over a period of years. But you can see this, how the chest is, you got these mailer stripes up here. All falcons have round brown dark eyes, and you can see that in this bird. What we call the eyeliner around the edge of the eye is blue, whereas in an adult it's going to be bright yellow. You can see these kind of weak yellow feet. Sometimes they can be gray, but as an adult they're going to be bright yellow. If their diet is really good, it may be a paler yellow if they're not feeding in such a great diet. So this is a little closer view. Today, there's even more development around the feathering in the head. It's actually a little more dark feathers today in what I'm finding. But here you can see the eyeliner. Peregrine also, their method of killing is they fly above their prey, they dive, we call it a stoop, they ball their feet up and smack the bird, and as it tumbles, they'll fly underneath it, grab it in their talons, and it's a meal. But the first thing they do, they have a tooth in the upper bill and a groove in the bottom. The first thing they do is bend over and trump in the neck, and the bird's dead. It's pretty instant for the bird, if it hasn't already been taken care of and getting whacked pretty good. So here's a hatchier bird. Look at the change in the molting of the feathers from a a juvenile first-year bird, and we would call this a subadult or second year. AYH after hatch year is what we would refer that to. But notice this bird, sometimes they're already yellow. The beak is what we call the sear. Another unique feature of falcons is the nostril up here. You can see it's got a baffle in the middle of it. So if you're flying at 200 miles an hour and you want to breathe, you've got to have some way to spread that air when you're breathing, and that's what that baffle is specifically for. So look at the change by the time you're an adult. And here's that tooth I was talking about, and the groove in the bottom. Very efficient method of taking care of the prey. This is called a sear. This is the nostril, and you can see the baffle in there, and the eyeliner in a full adult. And also notice the head now is almost completely dark. And some of the other subspecies in the world, that could be totally different. The one common thing is you would have the yellow. The yellow is also going to be in the feet. Again, and this is pointing out the baffle that's in the nostril. And here's the difference between the peregrine, and notice how light this is. And again, I took this picture probably 30 years ago. So there's been a change because of the mixture. You get male from one combination of subspecies with a female with another combination, and the plumage is going to vary. And you do that through 5 or 6 generations, and eventually almost all of them look exactly the same. And that's what we're finding today. And that's why it takes 75 years for a species or subspecies to be officially recognized. This is a merlin, and this is both are females. You can see the significant difference in the size of them. I'm unique in the merlin world in that I am the only one who's caught a leucistic merlin. So what does leucistic mean? It means an eruption in the plumage. In that case of that bird, it was all tan. It was not the normal color that you see there. This is the guy that I learned the most about peregrines. He's deceased today. This is Tom Nichols. And I think this is us at Craney Island, and with the ship in the background. Before Craney Island was tripled or quadrupled in size. So Tom and I caught that probably somewhere around 84, 85. So it's one of the very first adult, because when we got the bird, it had already been banded.
Reese, how did you catch it?
We used pigeons as lures, and we put a harness on it with a line, and again, they want their prey in the air, so you toss the pigeon up in the air, and it's dinner or lunch. And there's Tom holding it up, and this was an 8-year-old, so this is one of the very first of the adult species of peregrine that was flying, because this was somewhere around 84 or 5, something like that. So this is typically how we would catch them. And this is a peregrine. We're trapping this at Back Bay National Wildlife Refuge. And he's got the peregrine. And we can pull the string into us. Usually the harness, a leather harness, will have some filament loops on it. They get their feet tangled on it so they can't fly off. And that's the way we're able to recover the bird. And we would always weigh the bird, measure the bird, take as much information. At one period of time, we were taking blood samples because, again, back then, DNA was not as commonly used for identification as it is today. It was still new science. So this is me at Wise Point, on Eastern Shore, Virginia, with the juvenile. And I stopped trapping over there in 2003, so this is prior to that. And I had a little bit more fuzz up there than I've got today, but not much. It's brown around my chin. I don't know what happened. It's like this shirt. This shirt hung in a closet and it shrunk. What'd you say,
They
Sandy?
have a tendency
Oh,
to
she did.
shrink everything when you put them in a.
So this is another bird. My setup, generally at the Eastern Shore, we clear an area out, and the birds generally flew right over the collection booths, the feed booths, and I was not too far from that route, so I was maybe 100 yards off of Route 13. So this was set up with a series of nets and poles. Something I've, over a period of 20 years, got more sophisticated and had less escapees. This is second year Peregrine. And again, this one's got yellow feet. His feet are turning pretty bright by that time. This is one I caught at Bayville Farms. This was the darkest bird, and you can see the difference in those early years. This was 1992, so this was 30 years ago. So it's just about 4 or 5 generations of a mixture of the males and females and the different species, subspecies that were used to make the bird we see today. So a friend of mine who was a falconer called me and said, "Hey, I'm over here at Bayville Farm." This is when it was still a farm and hadn't been made into a golf course. And I'm trying to fly my Harris hawk over here, and you've got a peregrine over here that's trying to eat my Harris hawk. Can you come over here and trap that thing? So I did. As it turns out, it was hatched on the Columbia Medical Building in New York City.
Oh,
So,
my goodness gracious.
Darkest bird I've caught. It had bands on it, so I was able to specifically identify it. As it turns out, it had a sibling, a lady, this is a boy, and a juvenile. She eventually had a nest on the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. So they do get around. And here's the bands. And see, in New York, they were using black over red, we use black over green. And they were using a black band where we use green bands to specifically identify them from Virginia. So you get to do some really neat things as a falcon guy. One of the places that we put a nest box was underneath the I-64 high rise. So how do you get it there? It doesn't fly on its own. It gets put on one of the stanchions that holds the bridge up, and I got to do that. This is called a snooper. Let me back that up just a second, because you see the metal grate that you run over there? You'd be surprised, or maybe you won't be surprised how much that snooper shakes like that every time a truck goes across there. And that's me. Yep. And this is the nest box that was put underneath there. It has brand new pebbles, see no sticks in it. The only wooden part is the frame. The rest of it is pebbles, which the peregrine recognizes, wouldn't know what to do with the stick.
So, Reese, so you place these boxes in locations. Is the success rate high for?
About 50%. We have them, for example, currently on the Coleman Bridge. We had them at one time on the Hampton Boulevard Bridge, but about 50% success. The highway department, because of the construction, the widening of the 64 bridge and so forth, we've not had birds in there now for about 5 years. We also had them on the Gilmerton Bridge on Military Highway. So yeah, they've been pretty successful. And we don't know what the attraction is because it's not hardly like a cliff, but for some reason they seem to be attracted to it.
Reese, have you had enough time to know how long they live, they can live?
Well, we think about 20 years is a bird that's going to live a natural lifespan. So a peregrine found a home on the beachfront in Virginia Beach and hotel hopped. And always took the top floor. And so it knew exactly where to settle in. So this bird I call the oceanfront bird, came here his first year as a juvenile, first year bird, and came back for 15 years in a row.
Wow.
And this is, there was a condo couple that were not home, and I knew this bird was sitting on the 12th floor, which is the upper level. So I asked the manager if he thought it'd be all right if I tried to get up there and get a photo. And he said, "Oh yeah, come on." So I get up there, I open the window, this lady was asleep, but as soon as she heard a click, she woke up and she was gone. I think I got about 4 pictures. And you know, a camera goes click, click, click. Well, that's how fast it took for her to disappear.
Do they take pebbles up to where they plan to nest on top of these hotels and condos?
No,
What
we
do they
do
make
that.
it? Oh, you do that?
Yeah, you don't think they carried that?
Well, I didn't know. Oh, you have to take one of the boxes up there.
Yeah,
Oh, I thought that you said they made stone little places.
they do on a cliff.
Yeah, so I didn't know
In
how they,
Greenland.
okay.
The largest populations in southern Greenland, and I've been there. Sisismia,
How do you identify the male and the female?
size. The
Size.
female is always larger, and usually
That's like
about
a
a
lot.
third larger. So the male, they have 2 different roles. It's the primary purpose of the female to raise chicks, and its primary purpose of the male to find food. So they both can do both. She has to get physical exercise, so she goes out and flies, and he's given the responsibility. What's really interesting about that is sometimes he doesn't want to give up his responsibility, and she has to force him to get off a race.
And look, is it easy for you, because I don't think it would be easy for me from a distance looking at that, even if I knew that that was a peregrine falcon. I don't know if I would know if it was a male or female.
It's something to learn.
Been
To
looking
tell
at it
the
for 50
difference.
years.
Yeah.
Bruce has actually been out with me banding osprey a number of years ago. So this is part of their hotel hopping. You can see her up here on top of the Holiday Inn sign. Here's at the Oceans at the Oceanfront Virginia House. And this is a little bit closer. That's the 11th floor ledge, usually the top. This is the new Cavalier, which got torn down at 40th Street. So she had to find another home place.
Well, do
So
they
this is
find
part
it?
of the Sheraton. I mean, she just hotel hopped all over.
You have to move that nest every time you see them sitting on the new building.
No, they eventually come back.
Oh, okay.
No, they know we're homeless.
Reese, does
Yes.
any other bird try to nest there, or are they crazy if they do?
They wouldn't do it for long.
Yeah.
Peregrine are
Because-
very aggressive species. They're very territorial. It's their home, it's not your home.
Gotcha.
So this is at the Hilton, and you'll still see them during the migration period, particularly sitting on the Hilton. And I got this photo on the top of the parking garage, directly across the street from the Hilton. And that's a closer view. And this is an adult female. Better move along, I'm starting to run out of time here. Oops, and the Westin, ta-da! We got to the Westin. Where's the Westin? Pembroke, town center in Virginia Beach.
Reese, have you ever had to take a falcon to a rehabber?
Yes, yes. I've had a couple instances. One time at Back Bay in the early years, Peregrine made a serious mistake, tried to take a bird that was perched on the top of a post on the beach and broke its leg all to pieces. I mean, just completely shattered his leg. The veterinarian tried his best to repair the leg, but it eventually had to be put to sleep. Just too serious a wound. Steve?
Reese, how are you able to hold them by their legs without getting your hand chewed
Well,
up?
he said that he gets his chewed up.
Sometimes you don't.
You don't wear gloves?
No, you can't work with gloves and feel what you're doing. So, no, you don't work with gloves. I've actually got a little wound right there, and the other side of it's over there.
No scars.
So, actually, got his,
Yeah,
the
that's
hind talon is called a hallus, and it made its way all the way through my hand. Got infected, of course, because you don't have a clue what they last had in their feet. Okay, so the residents, I mean, you can see this bird's all up and down all over the ocean front, but she didn't return about 5 years ago, so she probably made it 15 years. Who knows how many chicks she had, average of 3 in the nest, so probably for 12 of that 15 years she was producing young, so who knows, maybe 30 kids out of that one bird. That's why we have 29 breeding pair today when we started with 0, none. So this is the Armada Hoffler building, and she's sitting up here underneath the security light.
What's that over there near
A little hard
the
to
point,
see.
kind of to the
Well,
left?
and this is the other one. So this is a pair, one sitting there and one sitting there.
Okay.
Okay, and where did they mate? Right there. And they met in the middle.
What do they, what,
It's called
color
copulation.
do they have?
You want?
Thank you.
What goes after them? They're so fast.
Great horned owls. Great horned owls are the closest thing to an enemy that they've got. And they, Peregrine are active during the daytime. Great horned owls are nocturnal, so when they're sitting someplace at night, if they're not real smart and they're sitting out in the open, great horned owls can take them. We had an incident about 25 years ago at Back Bay National Wildlife Refuge where Peregrine had spent the night on the top of a hack box, got taken by a great horned owl. The great horned owl flew over to the bayside, and we lost the signal for about 6 months. And when the signal came back, we went out, picked up the signal, and apparently a fox or raccoon or something, when the great horned owl had finished eating, he dropped it and it landed upside down, so the signal stopped. Fox or a raccoon comes along, plays with it a little bit, the antenna goes straight up in the air, ding, 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 and we went out and recovered it. Remains. That does happen. Actually, I've done that 3 or 4 times. One time at Red Wing Golf Course with the bald eagle, we were able to find one of the satellite transmitters that we put on exactly that kind of thing. Landed on the golf course, but because the GPS system is so accurate, I was able to drive right to the transmitter. I mean, had to actually put the brakes on so it hadn't gone over. Okay. Here we are at the Armada Hoffler building. You can see the top of the nest box that we put up there, and that's the female sitting beside it. And this is a normal perch on one of the columns on the Armada Hoffler building. Am I running too long? Okay. And here's the male and the female. The nest box is right here.
Do they mate for life?
Yes, generally. Life sometimes isn't very long. So, and they're, as I mentioned, they're very aggressive. We had a female that came in 2016, and in 2021, another female came in. We don't know exactly what happened to the original girl, but the girl from New Jersey won. Okay, this is what they look like when they're right overhead. And this is the adult female. This is actually a very young adult, because the striping and so forth is an indication. But look how yellow the feet are and the cere in the eyes.
It's even good.
That
Look at
bird's
those
eating pretty good.
talons. Look at those talons.
And once they grab hold of you, they don't let go.
Yeah, look at those.
So this is a closer view. This was the original female at Pembroke.
I guess they don't mind Christmas lights.
It gives them something to hold on to. So when the wind's blowing up there at 45 miles an
How big
hour,
are they? Can you give me a size like your hands?
male, female,
That big?
they can be. Yep,
Wow.
yep. And you see she's not banded. So the first girl at Pembroke, we don't know for sure where she came from, but just her plumage tells us that she's a young adult. So this is her again. This is the male. This is her boyfriend. Notice his bands. He was born on the eastern shore of Virginia, so we know exactly where he came from and exactly how old he is. That was her mate.
You gotta do
And
it.
he was still here as of October, this past 22. We don't know where he is today. He's moved. So this is the male that's in the nest box, and again you can see it's covered with gravel, pea gravel.
That was a good picture.
Pardon?
That's a really close up.
Yeah, I was right there. Let me tell you, they don't like it either when you show up. I mean, again, it's their territory, not yours.
They would like to give you some looks.
Evil eye.
Yeah, they really do kind of cock their head and
Usually
check you
they
out,
are,
don't they?
actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're usually talking to you pretty loudly.
Oh, interesting.
This is a female sitting on an egg. This is a really poor picture, but the law
giving
firm
it
is on the 21st floor of the Armada Hoffler building. Was very accommodating. They actually left a room unoccupied, so I would have access. I just had to let them know because they're doing a lot of privacy work. They wouldn't let me bring anybody with me. I was the only one. I had sole access to that room because of the privacy factor of what their attorneys up there working on. So here's the eggs. You can see
Oh, yeah.
in that case the eggs. That she's laying 4 eggs this particular year. This is 2016. Only one of them hatched. Sometimes, and she did this, she broke the eggs and ate the insides, whatever was in there. I actually had a couple photos of her eating one of the eggs.
Reese, I noticed this nest box has like a cover, like a roof and some walls on it, but I noticed some were just out in the open. That one you took, it didn't look like it had any.
But it was under a bridge.
Okay, the
Yeah.
one on the top of the roof.
So this is the one on the top of the building is
Okay.
not, doesn't have a cover. So this is pretty typical.
Cover sounds
And
bad.
here you can see one of the eggs is hatched. And
Oh,
here we
there
got
it
2 of the eggs are hatched, still 2 to go. I'll just run through these because I'm getting a little long. So this is the male with prey, and a lot of times she is fed by him. He'll go out and catch prey and bring it to her so she can take care of the kids. And here they are doing a food exchange.
Wow.
Usually he takes the best part of it first before he brings the rest of it to
Well,
her.
he's got work to do.
He's got to keep his energy level up. So here's, gives you some idea of the location. This is the corner of the 20th floor with the box sitting right there, and she's doing her job inside. Last year I had to replace the top.
How long do they usually last, the bird box?
Pardon?
How long do the boxes usually last?
Yeah, this box was put up there in 2009, And last year, I replaced the roof, or year before last now, I replaced the roof on it.
And they
Bet they weren't
recognize it.
happy with you.
Pardon?
That they weren't happy with you when you did it.
I tried to take it when they weren't there. It's safe to do that. I usually take an umbrella with me so they don't hit me in the head.
Wow.
I've got notches out of my ear and over here from Osprey. I've learned my lesson. You don't want to do that again. So here's prey. This is a female coming in with prey. And the chick feeding. And this is a chick starting to grow up. This is a chick is already about 2 weeks old. So when they're born, they're about 3 ounces. They take like 4 quarters and put it together in about the same weight.
What's the time frame from the time the egg is laid to the time it hatches to the time that they fledge and can fly?
Yeah, so incubation period is usually about 30 to 33 days for peregrine, and then somewhere around 40 days. In 2021, it was 44 days, which is about as long as we've ever seen peregrine. And usually they'll hang around for 2 or 3 weeks to continue to be fed and to learn how to feed on their own. So this kid is already about 2 weeks old versus that little fuzzball that was came out of the egg. So the fascinating part of a chick getting out of the egg is when the bird gets to be about 25, 26 days old, it gets a little active inside. Some of you ladies probably know that. The kid starts kicking you and so forth. Well, the bird inside that egg pretty much does the same thing. So their process, they have on the top of their upper mandible, upper beak, is an egg tooth, a sharp little point. And they turn themselves completely around the inside of the egg. That scores the inside, and then they poke a little hole called a pip, and then they stretch themselves out, and they stretch like that, and the egg breaks right in half.
Oh, wow. Goodness.
But it takes every ounce of strength they've got. So sometimes they'll lay there for 2, 3, 4 hours, and if people are watching that on a webcam, your phone starts ringing off the hook. Is it dead? Give them another 15 minutes, another 30 minutes. Because the adult will not feed them until they open their mouth and stick their head up. They instinctively know that they are not capable of swallowing food until they've got enough energy to do that. Okay, so there's a kid finally made his way out of the box and into the corner.
Bad behavior.
And here he is back inside, a couple days older. Usually that egg tooth is gone within 3 or 4 days. And here we are trying to capture the kid. You want to get the bird before he has any capability of being able to fly. And that's this is Dr. Bird catching the bird back in the corner, and we're going to take him away.
Where was the mother while you all were doing this?
Screaming at us.
But not trying to attack you?
Yes.
Oh.
Dive bombing at you.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. And one of us is always watching for the other to make sure you don't get smacked in the head. Okay, so this is Dr. Brian Watts. He's currently the director at the center and has been for about 20 years. So they're getting ready to band this chick. And here we are showing it to some of the employees of the law firm and the Armada Hoffler. There's been quite a cooperation between the law firm, Armada Hoffler, which owns the building, and DeVaris, which manages the building. Now, I've had just wonderful cooperation from them the whole time. And the same happened at Weston, except there I only had to deal with the management with the Weston. And this is the kid, we'll put him back in the box. And and they always talk to you. You really need earmuffs because they have a real high-pitched sound and blow your eardrums out.
He's still getting you what
It's
for.
like
You
rock
can-
shape.
You can just imagine, and look at the wall in the back. See what I mean
How
about
do you,
their
when they're,
toilet behavior?
when they're little like that, I guess they're called chicks when they're little, how do you tell the male from female?
Iris is a proper term.
What is that?
Iris is what they're called.
They're called ours, little ones?
Yeah, A-Y-E-R-I-S,
And how do you tell a male from a female when they're little like that?
size and weight.
Same answer.
Yeah, size and weight.
You mean the progression of how fast they grow?
Uh-huh.
Because when they're first born,
Yeah, the female generally grows a little faster than the male.
Reese, do you clean these boxes between seasons?
Not me. No,
Mother Nature.
weather usually takes care of it.
How long does it take to
My
actually?
permit doesn't allow for me to, that's not really true. And by the way, you need to have the proper federal and state permits in order to be able to do this. So not just anybody can go out and do it, you have to be properly licensed.
How long does it take from like when you capture the chick or iris or whatever, to band it and then put it back? Does it take a long time?
15 minutes.
15 minutes.
On
you,
average.
you don't wanna stress them out too much.
Well, you don't want to stress them out, but you want to minimize that effort. So if you've got 4 chicks, which you sometimes have, then it stretches it out. But again, you try to minimize that time and get them back in the box as quickly as you can.
Do they fight over food and stuff?
Oh, they sure do. And
Cause I know
usually
the
it's a
blue-footed
female.
booby will kill the chick that's,
Sibling side does happen.
you know, that's born later, hatches later, the predominant, yeah.
Yeah, so generally, it's 1 bird per day. They can't lay more than 1 bird. It's usually 24 hours from the time the sperm and the egg get together, makes its way through the fallopian tube. Takes about 7 days, we think, for that process. I've never actually observed that happening. But we're told by those biologists who've had the skill to be able to do that, it takes about 7 days. The final part is the formation of the egg itself. 1 bird an egg, 1 day per egg to come out. Sometimes it can be 2 days, sometimes it's 3 days. The bird that's the 3rd day out is usually at more risk because these birds grow very quickly. And the first birds out, particularly if they're female, are very aggressive. Even as a little teeny 5-ounce kid. Okay,
I like those feathers on.
this is,
Do the bands expand?
no, they're put on with brads. So the size of the band is dictated to you by the U.S. Geological Survey. So actually, I've had a couple times with red-tailed hawks where I had to use larger size because the leg was bigger, and you have to explain that. I mean, sometimes 3 or 4 letters before they accept your explanation. 1 year with barn owls, they didn't hatch out until September. Usually it's June or July. The latest I've ever had birds to hatch out. The banding lab just would not accept my explanation that I hadn't delayed reporting it to them for 3 months, but that actually happened in September. And what happened there was a tree service went out, cut down a dead tree, and out comes 4 baby chicks. So, really late. Okay, so we're moving on. This kid's starting to get feathered out.
I went through the ringer.
Gorgeous guy, isn't he?
Really?
This is a male, by the way. So here he is just a week later. Look how fast they've feathered out.
Wow.
And here he is up on the ledge, in this case on the top of the nest box. Look how all he's got left now are little tufts and on the top of his head.
So he's still hanging around home, so when did?
Still getting free food.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. So here he is out munching away on food that Mama or Daddy brought him. He's up on the ledge of the building. There he's back on the top of the box. He's getting those pectoral muscles all exercised, flapping up and down, learning what those long extensions are all about. And here he is about to do it. This is the day he actually flew. Oops, unfortunately for him, he thought he was chasing away, again, their aggressive nature. He thought he was chasing away an intruder bird, and it was just a reflection of himself in one of the windows on the building.
Oh, that must be
So
great.
he had freedom for 5 days. He's currently in the freezer at Center of Conservation Biology. So, this is 2021, and this is an intruder from New Jersey. And notice she's got a black band, even though she's using black and green, but she's got a black band on her leg. So called the biologist, said, you know about this girl? Oh yeah, she was born on one of our condos on the coast of New Jersey. Oh, okay, well, she's down here on the coast of Virginia Beach today.
Vacationing.
Well, it turned out it wasn't a vacation, she made home at the
Oh, there you go.
offer. But this is, she moved almost immediately. So this is a photo taken from the bedroom of the condo owners on the 33rd floor of the Westin, who gave me exclusive use of being able to monitor this pair. And
Oh, there it is.
there's her 4 eggs, and there's a vegetable planter box. And this lady used the planter box for all of her different plants that herbs that she would grow, but not this year. And notice how clean it is. Did you notice that? Not one bit of poop.
She might have just.
Things have changed a little bit.
Wow.
These 4 kids are growing very quickly. I'm sorry, I've gone way over my time.
Oh, my gosh.
So here's Mama. She was very, very noisy. She didn't like me or anybody. And of course, she already knew me from the year before, the Mama Hoffler, and I'm sure if she could get her talents in me, I don't know about it. Fortunately, I had a big, thick window between me and her. So this is the 4 kids. This is about a week before we took them out and abandoned them. So we knew those birds had 0 chance of survival off of that balcony that was facing Independence Boulevard. One of their habits, once they got out of the box, is to try to scoot right up next to whatever frame they've got, whether it's a wall. Well, in this case, the bottom of the railing had about a 6-inch gap, and if they tried to do that, they would scoot right off the top of the building. So we needed to get them out of the planter before they got out of the box. Plus, they had no way to get back in the box once they got out, because they weren't able to fly yet. So this is Dr. Watts, and this is one of the chicks. We put color bands on them. So this one is red. We use, in this case, red, yellow, green, and blue. And you can see this guy's partially feathered out. So they were transported. Dr. Watts took them to Shenandoah National Park, Franklin Cliffs. There's an overlook at Franklin Cliffs, and this is where they were taken.
Along with the mother?
No,
Catch you up.
no, Mama wanted nothing to do with me.
So who feeds them?
At night, The park staff, Shenandoah National Park staff would put food in the box at night. So they didn't have the human imprinting, knowing that they were getting their food and looking for people to feed them. So
Did
they
they all
didn't know where the
survive?
food was coming
Did
from.
they all?
Yes, they all survived and all fledged. They're out there someplace.
Look at that.
So they're lined up. We had 2 males, 2 females.
It's a rock band.
And even
Two
in,
men, two females, only, right?
so this is the 2 males, that's the 2 females. You can see the distinct difference in their size.
Double twin.
And again, that's it. So we had a lot of questions in the presentation.
What I'm going to do, in the interest of time, is please come up and ask, reach your questions, but we're gonna go to a 15-minute break. And please, try to keep it to 15 minutes.